Welcome to the disaster room. Okay, so maybe I should probably start introducing videos in general once I have a place to film that is not like this. But this video needs an introduction because before I started recording or testing audio or anything, I did the small talk thing of being like, "Hey, how are you? What have you been up to or whatever?" And Anna like started talking about what she was working on, and it was so fucking cool. And I just like we got sucked into discussion, and then I was like, all right, I need to start recording this. So it sort of comes in the middle. I do ask her to go back and explain the context, but yes, enjoy some really delightful info dumping, but understand that this is why there's even less of an introduction than usual.
So for the ability to for like the basic ability to grow and maintain a colony of cells, the things that you need for that are really not complicated things. So the main things that you need, sort of big things, are a laminar flow hood and a cell culture incubator. And so a cell culture incubator, all that is it is a box, and it is a box that is that has a couple of sensors to maintain 37 degree a temperature of 37 degrees and CO2 levels of 5 to 7%. That is all it's doing. Is it's maintaining temperature and maintaining CO2, as well as as well as maintaining humidity. So that's not actually you can go to Thermo Fisher and they'll sell you one of these for for £1,000. But the thing it's doing is not actually a complicated thing to do. You just need a CO2 tank and a heater and a tray of water, and then basically really a control system, and you put that in an insulated box, and there you have a box that you can keep cells alive in. So my plan for this is I'm gonna find a broken fridge, and because it's an insulated
Yeah.
box, a door and a gasket that and so then add add a get a so the things that people use for home bars, because there's an industry of big CO2 canisters for home, for people that have kegs at home.
What?
So yeah, and so just buy a big CO2 canister and a solenoid and a valve and a CO2 sensor. Plug that into an Arduino. Do the same for your temperature. Just get a couple of heaters, and then put a tray of water on the bottom to maintain humidity. And then you have your you have your tissue culture incubator.
Amazing.
Again, and then laminar flow hood. Same thing with the laminar flow hood is laminar flow hoods are slightly complicated because there's a minimum amount of airflow that you need, and you need to calculate for the size of your hood, the amount of the size of the fan, and then the size of the filter to be able to rely to consistently get that airflow. What a laminar flow hood is it's a box. It's a box that has an opening at the front, and the way that it keeps the inside of it sterile is that it's sucking in air through HEPA filter. You know what a HEPA filter is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sucking in air through a HEPA filter and then just blowing this down the sides of the box and out. So this way, it's you have positive pressure. It prevents outside air from getting in, and all of the air that's inside the box has gone through this sterile.
That's cool.
And so the reason for that is that obviously if you have your human cells in a petri dish, and you don't want random things from the air falling into your petri dish. It's not none of this is super super ultra sensitive. It's more just it's more in terms of for the sake of consistency and making sure things go right every single time. Because like petri dishes, the petri dishes aren't like sealed up or whatever. It's just like it's a plastic lid sitting on top of sitting on top of another piece of plastic. As it's a very loose seal, but that's enough to just prevent like big contaminants, a lot of like big contaminants like bacteria or fungal spores getting in. And so then if you want to like take the lid off to do something to the cells, then you put it in the laminar flow. Like you take petri dish, put it inside the hood, and then you can take off the lid, because like nothing in that box will have filtered out like all of the bacteria, all of the spores or whatever. Like that is like none of these are actually like neither of these things are complicated. Like they are not doing anything complicated, and so they're not like they are not actually that particularly hard or expensive to build if you're willing to build them rather than like buy them from a scientific supplier.
Okay, yeah. So, do you want to like give an overview of what you were telling me before we started recording about like the project you're doing? Because this sounds.
Oh yeah, so I'm at the moment I'm writing up a build guide for a tissue, like mammalian tissue culture at home. Here are all of the things that you need in order to do mammalian tissue culture. Here is how to build the things that are too expensive to buy. And then once I'm writing this up, and then once I have space, which I'm still that situation is complicated, but at some point, like once I have space, I will build this myself, and I'll document the build process, and then I will publish that alongside this guide, which I'm writing it now based on what I think will work, but I'm sure as I actually start building it, there will be edits that I need to make, so I realize that certain things don't work and certain things work better than other things, and there are going to be particular ways that you want to do this. And then I can publish this and go do you want to do biology research as a hobby? Here is how you can get started. Here's how you can get started from knowing nothing about doing wet lab bioscience. Is the sort of intention here? Because as far as I'm aware, there does not exist a coherent build guide to making your own lab. All of these things individually, there exist instructions on how to make them, but the actually setting up your own basic lab, as far as I'm aware, is not a thing that exists. So that's the intention of this, because I think it's cool and it's fun.
Yes, it's so fucking cool. Yeah, it feels like one of those things I don't know, there's a bunch of crafting sort of hobbies that are a little bit like this, where there's not, you kind of have to hunt around for YouTube videos for all the different bits. This is the most unhinged application of this process that I've ever heard. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, see, I mean, I think a lot of the reason I'm doing this is because I have a disease where I do have hobbies outside of my work, but when I think about the stuff that I feel like doing in my spare time, the main thing that comes to mind is testing the random hypotheses that my brain generates when I'm reading bio papers. Is I'll be reading a paper and it will mention something and I'll go, oh, that's interesting. Well, if that's the case, then surely you'd expect that. And and the thing I want to do in my free time is mostly just test those, because I can't I come up with those ideas, but I can't test them because I don't have arbitrary access to a lab with all of the things that I need.
But so you will.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so cool. Do you write down all these hypotheses, or is it more of one of those things where if you wait too long you lose interest and then you just have to wait for the next one to strike?
I mean, it's more, I mean, the thing is that my brain just generates hypotheses automatically in the process of reading papers. So it's not really worth writing the ideas down, because the ideas themselves are I will come up with a million more if I just go and read stuff. You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so you're in academia right now?
Well, so I'm in my last 2 months, thank God, of my undergraduate molecular biology.
Undergraduate, damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and so last 2 months of that, and then what I'm doing after that is up in the air at the moment. So I've gotten a grant to do some independent research on some theoretical biology ideas that I have, and like developing those ideas and writing about those ideas. I'm also like getting in contact with like various labs and people I think are doing interesting work to see if like they'll let me go work with them. But like yeah, the thing that I'm trying to get into research after I do for like once I'm finished with undergrad, because like yeah, that's just sort of what I want to do.
That's awesome. Does that mean like you don't? Yeah, I don't really know how academia stuff works. My boyfriend's a mathematician, so I'm like vaguely
Yeah.
familiar with that track. But like, so are you planning to go to grad school, or can you just like go straight into research because people are
Uh,
down for that?
I'm so well. The current thing that I'm looking at is I'm looking for I'm looking for internship for like research internships, particularly so in the US. If you have recently graduated from like an undergraduate degree, the US has a visa that allows you to do a 1 year internship at an academic institution
Cool.
in the US. And I did apply to PhDs, but I was mainly applying to US PhDs, and US PhDs are just so like when it comes to extracurriculars, you guys are fucking nuts. Uh, like there's the thing is, I have I did a research experience in both summers of my undergrad, and I've done part-time work as a technical writer. But like when I'm applying to PhDs, I'm going up against people that have done like an under like done their did their undergraduate degree, then did a 2 year masters and got multiple first author publications from their 2 year masters,
Jesus.
and are now applying for 5 year PhD programs. So it's like so the yeah I would like to go to grad school, but state of the state of competition there is nuts. So at the moment I'm looking to like, okay, how can I like make myself look more competitive and have like more to show, like
Uh-huh.
more to demonstrate that I'm a like good scientist.
God, that
um
sounds stressful, but at least it sounds like you're excited about it, and it's kind
yeah.
of the default. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. Oh yeah, so I should ask you basic questions.
Yeah.
um, yeah, so I've been asking people name, age, location.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Anna, I am 22 years old. Location is currently Leicester, but I have absolutely no idea where I will be after I graduate. There are so if things work out the way that I want them to, I might be moving to the US, and if I'm moving to the US, I have no idea where I'm moving to in the US. And if I'm staying in the UK, I will be moving somewhere, but but I'm not really constrained in terms of where. So yeah, so like currently in the UK, possibly will be in the US. Have no idea where I'll be in either of those two places in the next few months.
Okay, yeah. So are you down for like long distance type things?
I mean, to some extent, like that's kind of like that is an inherent constraint
Yeah.
at the moment. I'm interested, like, yeah, I'm happy with long distance, although like idea, but only if there is like a realistic future where that stops being
Yeah.
long distance, and I'll have like a better sense of where I'm going in the next few months, hopefully.
Mm.
I I will say for like in terms of I will say my I possibly have slightly non-standard criteria for long distance. Like if you live on the like if you live in the same country as me, I don't consider that to be long distance because of the way that my because of the nature of my of past relationships. Like if you live in the UK, like as far as I'm concerned, that's not a long distance relationship.
Like relatively easy to like fly out to meet them or take the train or something.
Yeah, so like my standard for like is if it's like if it's both financially and like if it's feasible in terms of like time and money to like spontaneously go and visit them, then I like then like that's I'm perfectly happy with that. Like ideally like living in the same city is nice. But if you don't have to plan to visit each other,
Hmm.
then as far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm concerned, that's fine.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's a lot of flexibility then. What type of are you looking for something like serious or casual and then like monogamous or like poly or something else?
I, I'm honestly, I'm looking for like I'm always looking for I'm always looking for something for something serious. Like I'm don't necessarily have an objection to casual relationships, but I'm not particularly interested in casual relationships where like they are expected to stay casual.
Yeah.
It's like and then as far as like polyamorous versus mono, I feel pretty flexible there though. I've experienced polyamorous relationships. I've experienced monogamous relationships. I don't feel like I have a strong preference for one or the other. So I think like whatever the like, if the person I'm dating whatever the person I'm dating happens to be, I think I will probably be fine with. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, right. Yes, I always forget to ask people what genders they're into because that
Uh,
matters.
I as I have discovered discovered relatively recently, I don't really have I don't really have a preference for gender. I sort of yeah I like this was a thing that it took me a while to realize, but I have extremely flexible in terms of sexuality, and it seems to just be like it really does seem to be like just how much do I like how comfortable do I feel with this person? How enjoyable how enjoyable are they to be around? And then like gender is basically irrelevant. Like some people would describe this as pansexual. I don't really like that term. I'm bisexual, but like the bisexuality is just anyone.
Okay, yeah. Based.
um,
Yes.
but
Oh, sorry.
I noticed one of the things I noticed the weird thing recently is the gender that I'm most attracted to at any given moment seems to mostly be dictated by the gender of the last person that I slept with.
No, that totally makes sense. I feel like the like I don't know, whoever I'm sort of most recently emotionally impressed on, it's
Yeah,
like I start pattern matching to the
yeah,
person.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's really funny. I'll even like sometimes almost like imagine similarities between like whoever I'm into at the moment and whoever I was last into, and then as I get to know the new person better, I'm like they're not alike at all.
yeah. I don't think I've quite had that. I don't think I've quite had that experience, but no, I do know exactly where you're coming from. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I was gonna ask what your day to day like is like, but this might not be super relevant given that you're gonna be like have a completely different day to day soon. But
Yeah.
do you find there's any sort of I don't know routines or ways that you like to spend your time that feel like they're probably gonna be pretty consistent?
I not really. Yeah, it's like it's very environment. Yeah, like
Mm.
my patterns of action are very environment dependent. And like right now, and whatever happens in the next 2 months, like my environment is going to change. Like, is going to change completely. Um, I'm just sort of yeah, like I the default, I wake up, I try and get up early. I don't always succeed. I take my medication, and I like read stuff until that kicks in, and then I work until I work until I'm exhausted, and then it's just like whatever can I like what can I find, like what can I do in the middle of stimulant crash that is like not aversive. It's sort of, yeah, especially because like spring break started today, and so like there is no structure, like there is no external structure to my days whatsoever.
Um, oh yeah, when you say read stuff, is it mostly like nonfiction or?
uh I I am trying to read. I'm trying to read more fiction. One of the things I have noticed is that um, it's like one of the problems with reading, like with mostly reading nonfiction, is that it's not actually conducive to having fun conversations with people. Because like if you read a lot of nonfiction, I've noticed that it can be really easy to get like trapped in what feels like a sort of conversational local minima of just like telling people about the things that you've read. And with like nonfiction stuff, it like with like especially technical stuff, it tends to be hard to like make a meaningful contribution, like, unless it's something you're already familiar with. So I'm trying to so I'm trying to read read more philosophy, like philosophy, and to some extent fiction. So I'm currently reading Incomplete Nature by Terence Deacon, which is about which is it's philosophy of biology. So it's this question of sort of, it's a little bit difficult to describe, but like what is it that biological systems are like? There is clearly a thing that we can look at and go, that's biology, as distinct from other things. But what is it about, like, what actually is it there? Like, what's the distinction we're actually picking up on? Which is both like it's relevant to my research, but it's also just a really interesting, like that's a really interesting and fun question. And I'm running a book club, Discord book club for it at the moment as well. And then the other thing that I'm reading is The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
just because very much an atheist, but also like very much enamored by religion, at like the sort of aesthetics and like religious stories. I do find really intriguing. And obviously C.S. Lewis in particular is a very good author. So
Yeah, people around this corner of Twitter are like very into the screw tape letters. I have
yeah,
not read them yet. Um, oh yeah, does religion matter much to you in a relationship?
uh, not at all.
Okay, yeah. What about like politics?
I mean, as like as a trans person, there's some limit. Like there is some
Yeah.
limit on the kinds of politics that that I can tolerate. But I can tolerate like a fairly wide range of politics. Like my own politics are like liberal, effectively like liberal welfarist. And like there's a range of like reasonable disagreement. I think that will like a range of reasonable disagreement around that I'm fine with. I mean, like just like I don't know, my feelings about like politics are just be reasonable, like act like be reasonable, and then it's fine.
Okay.
Um, and there are like yeah, and there are certain things that I think are just like there are certain positions that it's like I think are like kind of fundamentally unreasonable. But for the most part, like, as long as you can like if you can talk cogently about what you believe and why you believe it, then but I don't really care. I care much less about what you believe. To a lot, like obviously like within certain bounds.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You were saying you run a Discord book club. Are you
Yeah.
like is your social life like is a lot of it online or is this like are there a lot of
It's
people you know in real life involved or
so I like my social life is very online at the moment because of the city that I live in is just like demographically is not is not great. It's a very like I think the average like because I live in Leicester, like the average age here like is like 40 to 50 years old.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so and then it's also a relatively small city.
Mm.
Combined with the fact that incredibly frustrating, like my two main hobbies are both things that I can no longer do for for various reasons, which is really frustrating. Um,
What, can I ask what
yeah.
hobbies?
Oh yeah. So I was really into bouldering. And like there's a nice bouldering gym in the city centre, and that's actually where I met like my best local friend was at the bouldering gym. But for some reason, like a couple of years ago, I went to climb, and I just like got this excruciating pain when I tried to put pressure through the knuckle of my big toe,
What?
and I've not been able to I have not been able to identify the cause, especially because it's been over 2 years, and I still get the same pain when I try and climb. So it's like it's not. So it sort of indicates that it's a chronic issue, but I really unclear like what caused it. I'm gonna try one thing that I'm gonna try taking just like a massive dose of anti-inflammatories, and see if that helps. Um, but yeah, like that's been very frustrating. And then the other one is historical European martial arts. So I don't know
Oh,
if you're
I very briefly took a longsword fighting class, so
yeah
I'm vaguely familiar, yes.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
That's cool.
But yeah, but unfortunately the club the club that was running in my city, like the venue they were using, didn't want them there anymore for whatever reason, and they haven't been able to find a new venue. So I have
Bummer.
I have not been able to I haven't been able to go climbing or fencing in fencing in a while, which is really which is certainly hurt my offline social life significantly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So,
Um,
like, do you not meet about like people in classes as much, or is
I I mean, I do, but I just I don't know. It's not like the thing is I can get along I can get along with basically anyone. Like one of the things that I pride myself on is I can happily talk to any stranger. Like I can have it happily talk to any stranger and enjoy that for at least 3 hours. Like most people are interesting enough that you can have a 3 hour conversation with them, and that will be fun and interesting. But then the actual the subset of people that I sort of enjoy if I enjoy whose company I enjoy enough to actively seek them out and actively go out of my way to spend time with is a much smaller set than that. So and I mean, my entire it's also my entire class for this year is 11 people because I'm doing
oh,
a weird.
okay, yeah, that's not a lot of people to choose from.
Yeah, no.
Oh wow, that's why. Wait, sorry, why did you say it's only 11 people? Is this it's like a
So well, because uh,
oh,
my degree is not actually cellular and molecular biology. So technically speaking, the actual thing that I will graduate with is a bachelor's in natural sciences. Because I like the because yeah, so it's a weird interdisciplinary degree. That that attracts a very small number, very small number of people. For I don't really know why. But so yeah, so it's but for that reason, I have my class sizes are tiny.
I see. Yeah, what if a lot of people just don't know it's an option? I feel like that's the sort of thing that wouldn't occur to
I
somebody.
I mean, to some extent, I mean, they do advertise the degree. They
Oh,
do advertise
okay.
fairly substantially.
Nice.
But I expect a lot of it is just that people aren't aware that interdisciplinary science degrees are a thing, especially in the UK in particular because of how our system works. Um,
Does it seem like it's generally more restrictive or something, or?
Oh yeah, so in the UK, like the way that you don't get to pick classes,
Oh.
in a full sense, where like you apply to university and you apply for a specific degree, like you apply for a specific degree before you've entered into the university. So you will apply to do bachelor's in physics, in biology, in mathematics, or whatever, and then like there is just and then like for whatever degree that is, the classes for that degree like are all decided like by the university, like university administration. Like you will take these classes this time. Like there's not really any like there. So usually like you'll get a very narrow, like a very small set of choices where like if you're doing biology, you'll get to pick between like you'll get to in your second year like you'll get to pick like doing like ecology or bioinformatics or genetics as like you'll get to pick between those.
Ah.
But that's about the extent of your choice for most degrees over here.
Oh wow.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
I guess that simplifies things somewhat, but.
yeah. I, I have mixed feelings. Yeah, I have like mixed feelings about about the way the university works in the UK versus the US. Like, I think some of the ways that we do things here are clearly superior, and other ways are like irritatingly bureaucratic.
Yeah, that sounds right. Based on what I remember reading in Harry Potter, there's a lot of bureaucracy. How do you feel about pets? Do you have allergies, or would you be open to
uh,
pets, or do you have any?
uh, Broadly, yeah. I mean, mostly very happy with pets. I'm not as in love with dogs as a lot of people around me seem to be. But I generally, I will not be, I'm not unhappy living with dogs and like natural fun. I feel like. I feel like it feels embarrassingly stereotypical to say I really like cats, but I do really like cats. And then my other like what oh yeah one of my other like hobbies that is not I'm not doing it because it's like not really a viable hobby when you are moving a minimum of every 8 months.
Mm.
But I really like tropical fish keeping. That was one of my main hobbies as a kid, because like my stepmother had a like 120-gallon saltwater fish tank, and I was like the only one like I was the only like one of my siblings actually like that cared about it. And so like she'd send me to go and research like what things are compatible with what conditions does this, if we want to get this like this coral, or what coral, like what conditions does it need. Like a lot of my best memories like as a kid, the times that like I would drive to, like it would just be me and my stepmom, and like she would take me and going to either like the local fish shop or the dealer that we got a lot of our saltwater fish and corals from, and it would just be me and her. I would go like and we would go and I would help her pick out things for the tank or things for my tank, and those are like unambiguously some of the best memories I have of my childhood.
Oh, that's so cute. Would you do you want to like take up fish keeping again once you're more
Uh,
settled, or?
once I'm like living well, once slash if I'm like living somewhere like for like in one place for an extended period of time, then I would really like to get like then I would really like to start fish keeping again. I'm not sure how I feel. I'm not sure how I feel about saltwater versus freshwater. I think a lot of that just depends on budget, because it's not that so saltwater is not inherently more expensive than freshwater, but for sort of reasons you would probably expect, the things that you can do with there's a lot more like limited things that you can do with a small saltwater tank than you can with a small fresh.
Oh.
Um, but all because like saltwater tank, that's like everything there comes from the ocean.
Mhm.
So there's a relatively narrow range of conditions that everything in there will be adapted to, because things in the sea, like the sea is this massive sink for whatever like chemical or temperature changes. So saltwater organisms are usually like used to things like being like usually adapted to a fairly narrow range of things, whereas freshwater, like if you like narrow streams or rivers or lakes, like those are going to have like quite variable conditions depending on season, depending on where exactly they are, in the world, and so because one of the main things is that with a very with a like so in part for like with a very large tank, that smooths out a lot of the fluctuations in conditions, that uh, again like saltwater fish are much more sensitive to. But then also just then also there aren't nearly so many saltwater fish that are happy in confined environments. Yeah, like a 20 gallon freshwater tank. There's just like there's a lot more that you can do with that that's cool and neat and interesting than with a 20-gallon saltwater tank. Like with a 20-gallon saltwater tank, like the list of organisms you can have in there is just like there are like maybe 20 different things in the trade that you can have in that tank.
Oh wow.
Whereas with a freshwater tank, like there's a huge variety, depending on like what exactly you want to do and sort of what your risk tolerance is.
Risk tolerance for what?
Well, so the thing is that like, with these fish tanks, you are creating an artificial ecosystem, and so like your entire job is trying to get everything to effectively balance itself out like over over the course of a week. You want the things that are flowing in, so the things that are being produced by the fish to effectively like be more or less like at least like not substantially bigger than the rate at which things are flowing out as a result of filtration and water changes, and also plants absorbing the nitrogen coming out of the waste, and so like the closer you get your inputs up to the rate of up to the same level as your outputs, like the closer your inputs are to your outputs, the more vulnerable things are, like the more opportunities there are for things to go wrong if you're not paying really close
Okay.
close attention. So it's all like, yeah, you are trying to balance the water chemistry, trying to balance the food consumption, and it's just like sort of a lot of it is like how skilled are you? Like how skilled are you at doing? How much attention are you paying for this? Because there's I can't remember exactly what it's called, but there's a style of tank where you set things up so that so that you don't it's effectively entirely self-sufficient. So you have a really small number of fish in there, and then a small number of invertebrates, and so the small number of fish will eat some of the baby invertebrates, but not all of them, so they can keep reproducing. And then you have lots and lots of plants in there, so that the ammonia from the waste that the fish are producing, or well, realistically, the nitrates, the plants will absorb the nitrates and use that to grow, because the nitrate buildup is toxic to the fish.
Okay.
And so it's all and you can just it's so nicely balanced that you can just leave it like that and not touch it and not do anything to it apart from prune the plants every now and then.
So cool.
It's really cool. They're really neat. Like they're a really neat style of tank, and they also require they generally require someone who's really deeply thought through everything and really knows what they're doing in terms of maintaining fish. But they're really cool. They're a really cool style of
The final boss of fish tanks.
kind of, yeah.
That's so rad. God,
Yeah,
I don't need more hobbies. That's really cool.
yeah, no, it's so cool. I it's like and a small like 10 gallon like tropical freshwater fish tank is really not that expensive. And it's a small can't see the hand gestures I'm making, but 10 gallons does not take up that much space, and you
Okay.
can just put it on it. You can just put it on a table, and again, like sort of as long as you're not trying to do anything too weird, like that's it's not that much money, and it's so nice to like to just sit down in the evenings, turn all of the lights off, and just have the tank like have only the tank light on, and just sit and stare and watch.
So soothing. That sounds really
Yeah.
nice. That's cool. So you got into this because you said your stepmom was really into.
Yeah. Like when I was a kid, like we had so many fish tanks, but the really good, like the really sort of impressive one, like was a 120 gallon saltwater tank. So I think that's like 6 feet
Holy shit.
long by 4 feet tall, and then a couple of and then like 3 feet deep. Um, I think actually, so I think probably no, like it's not quite right, like 4 feet to 3 feet to 3 feet. But yeah, like just really because it had corals and it had like clownfish and yellow tangs, like just really spectacular.
So
Um,
cool.
it's so yeah. So funnily enough, that's how I got my start in online communities was through that actually. Um,
That makes sense.
yeah. My first ever online community was the saltwaterfish.com forums.
That's so cute. Like, how old were you?
10.
That sounds right. Yeah, that's like the
Yeah.
right age to be starting in forums.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, that's.
Yeah.
Did your stepmom know you were on these forums?
I think so. Yeah, because she would like I was always sort of the I was kind of like I was the one in the family that liked research and liked reading.
Yeah.
So as I said, like she would ask me to like if she wanted to get a new fish or a new coral, she would ask me to go and find out whether or not I can actually put that in this tank.
That's
And
awesome.
I would one of the places, especially like in 2011 or so, where you would end up with when asking that kind of question was like online aquaculture forums. So
Hell yeah. That's so cool.
yeah.
Um, oh yeah, one of the questions I was gonna ask anyway, somewhat
Mhm.
related, is do you have a pretty like is your relationship with your family good? Do you
Oh, not, I have not spoken to I've not spoken to my family like effectively since the day I turned
oh
18 in a
wow.
sort of that wasn't actually intention. It wasn't actually intentional. I mean, so I guess like I um I'm gonna I'll like briefly mention what happened because I don't really feel like anything by recounting it. But like basically, like my dad was a drug dealer, and so
Oh,
like on the day of my 18th birthday was the third time in 2 years that people like other uh like people like you know drug addicts effectively drug addicts like broke into the house with like machetes and such
holy shit.
searching for like cash and searching for cash and drugs and like that was the that time was like the last time I wasn't there. I so it happened twice before where I was the only one at home.
Oh my
This time
god.
like me and my dad at home. So it ended up in like my dad like actually like a bloody fight between my dad and them. And so for like first couple of days, I just could not go back because the house was a crime scene and like the couch was soaked in blood. Um,
Holy
and
shit.
so I ended up like my dad was staying at his girlfriend's. And so I ended up couch surfing with friends like when the sort of like when that stopped being like when we could go back to the house, I was like, I don't really, I'm not really interested in doing that. Like, I would rather stay living with any, like, in basically living with basically anyone else. Um, a- and after that, yeah, and then after that point, I just sort of, like, then after that, I was like, I like basically like I just asked him to say sorry.
Mm.
Like because he was like the reason that happened is because he decided that he did not realize that like selling drugs from the house that he and his teenage kid were living in might not be an amazing idea. And so I just texted him and I asked him to say I just need you to say sorry for like because this like I got actual actual PTSD, like
Yeah.
the whole panic attacks, like whenever I heard noises, like unfamiliar noises outside as as a result of this. I just texted him and asked him to say sorry, and he wouldn't. And at that point, I was like, okay, I don't like value this relationship enough to continue having a relationship with you if you can't just like say sorry to me for like all I needed him to do was just say I'm like yes I fucked up and I am sorry, and he wouldn't do that, so I was like okay then I just like don't really have a reason to keep having a relationship with you because he wasn't really like he was unemployed, so it wasn't really a source of financial support. It was like how much do I value the relationship with someone who acts like this? And the answer was like, yeah, not very much.
It's like the world's worst Walter White.
No, at least Walter White was like there was some sense in which Walter White was competent.
Yeah, like he was making money, and I didn't watch much of the show, but it seemed like he was at least making an attempt to separate it from his family a little bit.
Yeah,
Holy shit.
no, there was no like in this there was no like driving out into the middle of nowhere into the middle of nowhere to sell drugs. Actually, God, sorry, I'm not gonna like so. For me, like these are all just like fun stories. I like don't feel bad. Like this is just like oh yeah, this happened to me. That was weird. So I'm not really sort of like, but just so yeah. But I just like I'm occasionally reminded of the fact that there was one time where I was like in the car with my dad and one of his friends, like driving out to an abandoned car park on the edge of the town we lived in, and then I was never told what exactly was happening, but all I know is that one of my dad's sketchiest one of my dad's friends who was a like known local drug dealer got out of the car, went over to the only other car in this abandoned car park, was at the window of that car for a little bit, and then came back to our car, and we drove back into town.
I feel like I've seen that on TV.
Yes,
Spooky.
exactly. So, God, my opinion of my dad is I sincerely believe that my dad loved me, and I genuinely believe he was trying his best. I just think he was a fucking moron.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I don't. So you got the smart genes from your mom then, or?
I mean, no. So like the this is another way. Okay, yeah, this is another like tragic backstory here. But the last thing I heard about my biological mother is that she was deemed mentally unfit to stand trial for attempted murder because she had a psychotic break where she thought she died and gone to heaven, so she set her flat on fire to kill her boyfriend, so her boyfriend would be in heaven with her.
Oh, wow.
That is like, the thing is, I have no idea whether or not that's true. That's just the last time anyone told me, like anyone who had any like contact with her told me anything about her. I'm like, I've discussed with my eldest sister about like potentially hiring a private investigator to try and find like, is this, first of all, did that actually happen? Like, are there any records of like her like existence? Because she's not like, I can't find her online. I can find birth records, but I can't even find marriage records. So I've tried like all of the sort of open source tools to try and like find out what happened, but she's basically invisible.
That feels like that would have been a big news story.
Uh, I mean, Probably not a big news story. Like, you know, like the sort of thing that gets like, I don't know, like that's the kind of thing that gets like a small subtitle in one of the local papers,
Mm,
and then like everyone sort of moves on because like the only people it really like mattered that much to was like her and him.
yeah.
And I have no idea. I have no idea who her boyfriend was or how to find him.
Mm.
And I have never met like I never. The only person I knew on my like mother's side of the family was my mother. So
Okay, yeah. Man. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's like it was interesting. You know, I can't. I don't feel particularly bad about any of it. It's like gives me entertaining stories to tell at the very least.
Yeah, seriously. Damn.
Um,
Okay, yeah, yeah, because
yeah,
yeah, I've been asking people at their families because a lot of the time it's like, it might matter to them,
yeah,
like holiday things or like,
mhm,
does it like, do they
yeah.
care if their family gets along with their partner? But it sounds like this is not something that's a concern.
No, not really.
Oh shit. Alarm's going off. Okay, yeah. Cool. Not great.
Yeah,
Damn.
fine.
Um, yeah, I need to figure out like a good way to order questions that feels more sensible because I feel like all
Yeah,
of mine are just completely unrelated to each other if there's not a natural segue. But
that
are,
makes
are you
sense.
are you familiar with like ask culture versus guest culture?
Yeah, I am.
Do you feel like you fit kind of into one of those, or do you have an opinion about it?
I I feel like okay. I feel like I'm getting like getting sort of less autistic as I get older. To be honest, where I feel like I mean I'm always in fate. I'm Ask culture is fine, but I just feel like increasingly like there's but I also just increasingly there's sort of like there's a lot of things where I feel like you should like I don't know learn enough social skills so that these things don't need to be explicit and you can intuit them. I'm very I'm like uh, I'm like I'm I basically I sort of grew up around rationalists, and I'm also I'm also like embedded like in sort of like a lot of the rationalist adjacent trans communities. So like Ask culture is fine, and I'm fine with it. But I do also feel like I also feel like there's a sort of I don't know like you do at a certain point it becomes like I'm increasingly understanding why Ask culture is not necessarily the thing that everyone does. Like there are advantages and disadvantages to both. And I sort of I under like and I'm increasingly sort of like some of the advantages of guest culture. It's just like, yeah, you should not like it it makes things it just it makes certain kinds of social interactions smoother. Where if you can just like expect that people will be able to intuit what the expectations are, and I do kind of value that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think I used to be much more like, finding out about ask culture or whatever, or like, why can't everybody make everything much more explicit? And now I'm starting to,
Yeah,
yeah. You said you sort of grew up in rationalist circles.
yeah.
Is there like a big rationalist community near you, or like on?
So I grew up in a small town like 30 minutes outside of Cambridge, so the UK Cambridge, obviously.
Yeah.
So and I started reading SSC when I was 16 and so I like ended up going to Cambridge and participating in like and going to the ACX meetups and like, rationalist meetups in Cambridge. Growing up with rationalists, I mean that sort of like in rationalists were like they were the community that I had growing up that was like mostly online but also substantially in person, that I actually like actively enjoyed and really like got a huge amount of value in being a part of. So a lot of the like cultural and intellectual norms from rationalists are things that I feel comfortable with, and like and do do intuitively. But and then there's also combined with that there's also being a trans girl, where like trans girl like mostly like hanging out with rationalist trans girls because like a lot of the like there's a very like there's a like a large spectrum of trans of trans women. Some of them are like, a lot of them are like the most amazing people you have ever met in your life, and then a lot of them are also like the most insufferable people that you've ever met in your entire life. Uh, but like the trans people that I hang out with are like not like sort of the rationalist adjacent ones, and the ones that have picked up rationalist adjacent norms, but then a lot of like the sort of trans girl norms around sexuality and open, like trans girl in particular norms around sexuality and openness are things that I'm also quite used to and mostly like am mostly pretty happy with. I like the fact that among like trans women, like among like trans people in general, like it's just very easy to talk about sex and sexuality and like desire for intimacy, and flirting is something that's low stakes. Like if you like ask someone, if you ask someone out, or if you're flirty with someone and they're not attracted, like, and they're not attracted to you, like in these, like, again, like among trans women, like sort of queer community more broadly, but especially in my experience among trans people, like, yeah, if you ask someone out and you're flirty with them and they don't reciprocate, like that is like there is no social cost to that. Like that everyone is very very chill, is very chill with that. It's really just not a big deal, which I think is really nice. And I'm, as much as like there are certain norms, that like autistic people that sort of like autistic people like reject, but I think, yeah, I don't know, I understand both sides here, but like the way that I think a lot of the ways that, like, especially again like the queer communities I'm in, engage with romance and sex and sexuality is just like so much healthier than the way that like cis people seem to. Yeah. Just like, but like the sort of, I don't know, that it just seems to be like insane levels of neuroticism when it comes to like heterosexual dating, and like that it's like, okay, but you could like, if it were more acceptable for people to be honest, then you could avoid so much of this.
I think a lot of people do, like, they just sidestep it entirely, and other people are looking at them like, oh, they just must be really lucky or whatever, and it's like, no, they're just not approaching it like it's an adversarial interaction.
Yeah. I think that's probably true. I mean, I wouldn't, I mean, I wouldn't have that perspective, because I cannot, I just sort of like, I like, no one is really like, I'm very clearly a trans person, so but that sounds absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, it does feel like, I can't figure out, I think some of it is just the endless gender wars for centuries or something.
Yeah,
fucked people up real bad, but
I mean, I do think that's part of it, where like with, I mean, inherent to being trans is fucking around with gender, is like weirdness, people not fitting neatly into gendered categories, which means that you do away with a lot of the like cultural scripts around men and women, like, and like the ways that men are like, and sort of like notions of like male sexuality being inherently threatening, that I think is probably feels like a lot of what dictates a lot of the social norms around heterosexual dating. Yeah. There's not really like, this is definitely a thing that trans communities trans communities have issues with this too, but it's like, it is ultimately like, I feel like it's a much more like, people are generally feel much more equal in terms of like distribution of desire, distribution of desire and desirability, which is probably a big part of why we can have a big part of why people have like these much simpler norms around things.
Yeah, it's like, not like there's a view of like sex being a thing that one set of people has and the other set of people is trying to capture or something.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's less notion of someone else, like of like, of like sexuality is like sexuality as this force that needs to be restrained.
Mhm.
It is what it feels like a lot of heterosexual dating is centered around, which is like I honestly do understand. I do understand. I do understand that. I can see it's again like there's like especially like there's this like bottom fifth percentile of men that are just absolutely unambiguously fucking awful,
Yeah.
and a lot of straight dating norms seem to be like, how do we like mitigate the harm from this fifth percentile of men, which is just like, yeah, makes sense. It's miserable though.
Yeah, and it feels like a surprising number of people have encountered these types of guys, which makes it feel like it's a lot more of them or
A surprising,
something. I don't. I feel like a surprising number of women, at least. I don't know if it's like selection
yeah,
or what, but like a surprising number of women I know have had like experiences with men that like seem like are just like incomprehensibly bad to me because like I have
yeah,
not had any such experiences. So it's like one of those different
yeah,
world things, and I'm like,
uh,
they're like
yeah,
spiders, George. These dudes, I don't know.
yeah. I think that's just like, I think just like part of that is like these norms may like create like this is not a novel point. Like these norms create adverse selection, where it means that like the like because you have all of these norms about constraining that behavior, like the people that most often approach women are going to be the people that don't care about those norms, who are like disproportionately going to be like awful people. I've gotten a handful of like weird messages
Mhm.
on Twitter and Facebook. Like, got one of my favorite interactions on Twitter is because I didn't used to have a trans flag in my profile, and I incidentally mentioned something about my own about like transness, and this guy's like, I'm so disappointed that you're trans because I was really attracted to you and I was like wanted to ask you out on a date, but now I know you're trans. I can't possibly do that. I was like, and this wasn't a DM. Like he replied to something that I posted saying this.
Why are
What
people
the
so embarrassing?
yeah.
Oh, cringe hurts.
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, like I've had some of these interactions as a trans person,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I like at least in like I think like if I'm not speaking, like I pass pretty well, but still but still like I'm not a cis woman, but just by virtue of the fact that you can see my face in my profile picture, and like by virtue of like approaching vaguely attractive femininity, I've had a handful of like weird, creepy interactions with guys. So I can entirely imagine like people who are more conventionally attractive than I am, and like not obviously like doing something weird with gender. Like I can entirely see how like that just becomes a massive issue that you are dealing with constantly.
Yeah. And there's a thing too where I think a lot of like straight women want to be approached by the like find it attractive to
Yeah,
or like don't won't find a guy attractive if he's not willing to approach
mhm,
kind of, which
yeah,
then means that their pool like has like a lot of these shitheads, which then
yeah,
informs their views on men, and then it's just
yes.
terrible.
No, no, that's also very that's also a huge element of this. Which again, like one of my favorite things to do because I don't feel like sort of any of this. I don't really have any of. I have a, don't get me wrong. I have a little bit of neuroticism around gender and gender roles, but I haven't really like no one has really imposed gendered norms on me,
Mhm.
and so for this reason one of my favorite things to do is like go to bars or go to clubs and just hit on attractive men there, because most of the time they won't be interested in it, but you can see their eyes light up from being complimented by a female or feminine person. They always look so happy, and it's incredibly fun. It's incredibly fun to be able to just go out and make someone's eyes light up just by giving them like a not particularly well crafted compliment.
That's so cute, actually. Yeah, I feel like women are often afraid to do things like this, even if they would want to, because it's like they're worried about if the guy doesn't reject them,
Yeah,
almost. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, whereas for me, like, I mean, my expectation is that I don't know. I don't know how many men. I have no idea like how many men are like interested in trans women. This is one of those things where it's really like there's no real way of actually getting a sense of
Yeah.
actually getting this because it's like all bound up in weird social stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm mostly like well, yeah, I think one of the reasons this is easier for me is that if I'm not actually that attracted to them, or if I don't find them that interesting, I'm not I'm not expecting them to pursue me because I'm not necessarily like the modal an instance of the modal person that they're attracted to. So I do imagine that makes it easier, but it's just fun. It's still like it's really really fun, and more people should do it.
Definitely agree. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've had a I guess I haven't been so aggressive, but I feel like I've been aggressive than women tend to be. And
Yeah,
I I'm not, I don't know, I just haven't ever had that sort of like fear of men or fear of like, oh, what
yeah,
if this guy does respond well or something? So I feel like my experience has been
yeah.
similar to yours.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's been? Do you feel like you had like a noticeably? Is there anything about your upbringing that you feel like might that was sort of distinct that you feel might have led to like not absorbing gendered norms the way that other people do?
Yeah,
Um.
I mean, maybe like my mom's not especially feminine or whatever, and
Mhm.
kind of yeah. So
Yeah.
and nobody ever tried to get me to do any girl things, and
Yeah.
all of my friends, not all, it was like
Mhm.
mostly friends with guys growing up and this type of thing. But I just never
Yeah.
really understood women at all. Like I've started to kind of vaguely understand women over the last few years of talking to
Yeah.
them more.
Yeah. This definitely feels like an archetype of cis woman. Like yeah, that definitely yes, cis woman never really got like never really you like formed strong social bonds with women growing up. Like that definitely feels like a type of woman that I encounter semi regularly. And they end up having like very different feelings about a lot of the stuff to like women that felt like really had like lots of female friends. It was like from the like random samplings of people that I've met. This seems to be a thing.
Yeah, there's
Um,
definitely a thing where you get sort of like this type gets labeled a pick me a lot, though I think it depends more on like how they relate to other women,
yeah,
I'm not really sure. I feel like I I still don't really understand the gender thing, but I just identify as agender because I feel like it's like hard enough work trying to model actual
yeah,
women that I'm
I,
like I don't feel any closer to them than I do to men.
yeah. No, that's totally fair. I mean, yeah, I sort of like my own feeling is like I'm like insofar as I feel entirely like I'm happy to identify as a woman just because like I want to look I want to look like a woman. I want to I want to ideally like I don't I would like to be like relatively like not clearly distinguishable from a
Mm,
cis woman because like that's where sort of the locus of my dysphoria like the locus of my dysphoria is on like mostly on secondary sex characteristics like physical appearance stuff and like insofar as I am like yeah insofar as I look like a woman I would like people to perceive me I'd like people to perceive me as a woman, but I like most of my sort of like interact, but a lot of, but I also, yeah, I'm not really intentionally being feminine, and like I like playing with it. I do like womanhood as a performance. Like my one of my boyfriends, like the first date we went on because he was like 11 years older than me, and a rich like and a fairly like a software engineer like
mm,
earning a like very like a software engineer in Seattle like earning a very good salary, and I was a like and 20 like early 20s college student. And so just like I really wanted to on our first date, like I really wanted to play that up because deliberately like playing up the performance of older guy with like older rich guy with young like college student girlfriend that is a fun role to perform. So our first date like we went out to a really nice restaurant and I like wore like my most formal dress, and he dressed up in a suit, and then we got expensive cocktails expensive cocktails at the Four Seasons Hotel, just because it was fun to play into the stereotype, but it's not like I don't actually feel I don't actually feel like I don't feel like that's a thing that I have to do. I don't feel like that's part of my identity. It's just like here is a cultural script, and it can be fun to lean into cultural scripts sometimes.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That I should consider trying this sometimes. Actually, I get too neurotic about like I don't know gender roles or something.
Yeah, I it's fun to I just like I have this thing. I don't know if you experience any of this, but I feel very satisfied. Like I feel satisfied to what feels like a weird degree when I'm like very strongly playing to type. Like I kind of it feels quite satisfying when I'm a stereotype of the thing that I am. Like I like actively enjoy like being a stereotypical woman. I actively enjoy being a stereotypical trans woman. I enjoy being a stereotypical like academic. Um, yeah, something about just like really playing particular characters I find really fun. I don't know if that's a thing that you like recognize at all.
Feel like I might be the opposite where I like confusing people. Like
Uh,
I like when I don't know, when I'm talking to somebody and like I can tell that they don't expect me to have an interest that I do or something like this.
yeah.
Like I got
Uh,
pretty into watching MMA for a while, and so
uh,
like whenever I'm like meeting a new guy
yeah.
who's like fairly masculine, I'll
Uh,
often bring it up because there's like reasonably high odds that they're kind of into it too, and like
yeah.
they're pretty consistently like, "You what?" It just
Yeah.
like feels so good.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Right. That's like I think that's literally the opposite of the thing. Literally the opposite of the thing that I experience. Like because I definitely I like the fact that I have a lot of stereotypical trans girl interests. I find that fun. Like I cannot overemphasize the extent to which I am a gun nut.
Oh
I
really? What?
yeah
Oh, we gotta talk
yeah.
about this.
Oh yeah. So actually let me tell you. So one of the most expensive single objects I own is I don't know if you are familiar with this book.
I am not.
Um,
Whoa.
So okay, so this is this book was like this was this is $100 book, and it is the most comprehensive book that exists on the development of British military bullpup rifles, um, because it's written by the UK has a national firearms collection, which in part is dedicated to it as a reference collection of all of the firearms adopted by the British Army from the 1800s up to the modern day. And this book was written by the head of the Royal Army. So he has access to like all of these guns. No one has more access to these specific firearms than he does, and no one has more knowledge of them because he runs the place that is dedicated to preserving the guns themselves and the information about those guns. And it's such a just so much technical minutia, technical minutia and also on the development minutia, why how did this very specific decision end up being made by this particular committee, why does the UK have such a weird love affair with bullpup firearms in the first place? But that's this is one of my favorite things that I own, and every time so that's so just a very strong academic interest, and then also just every time I go to the US, I try and find opportunities to go shooting because I love shooting.
That's awesome. Fucking based. Oh my god.
um,
I feel like I should be asking you a bunch more questions that are in theory relevant to long-term relationships, but it's so fun to just get info dumps on various interesting.
yeah.
I
I
imagine this would be one of the highlights of, like, if somebody is like, oh, do I want to date Anna? Like
yeah,
this is
I
one of the reasons.
it's a thing I, I'm trying to become more calibrated on it. Like I definitely like one of my social failure modes is that I can fall into is like forgetting when to stop. Is because just like is I'll start saying a thing and I'll just like I'll feel like there will be so many things that I want to say, and a lot of the time, like I have so much energy that it becomes very easy to unless I'm with people that have similar amounts of energy, I can just sort of unintentionally like steamroll entire conversations. I'm trying to be more aware of that failure mode and be more active in terms of asking questions with people. But it is definitely a pattern of interaction for me that is natural. So if you like this kind of thing, then yeah, like you will like this one. This is a thing I do.
Hell yeah.
Um, are you also like, very into firearms?
I'm not. I like him in theory. I'm like not
Ah,
technical, and I have very low like energy and attention kind of. I'm
that's
hoping if I sort out health problems, maybe I'll have more curiosity and then I'll start getting into things like this.
that's totally fair. I
But
mean, well, I will say, for me, like, one of the main things that got me really interested in firearms was because, I assume you're familiar with, with Forgotten Weapons.
mm,
Um, so Forgotten Weapons it's a YouTube channel, and, like, it's just, like, a massive catalog of, like, him finding, a lot of the time, like, weird, obscure firearms and taking them apart and explaining how they work and explaining, like, the history of them.
cool.
And so
Okay.
the way that I ended up interested in firearms was because like watching YouTube is sort of my default is a kind of a default like I don't have any energy or any focus thing. So I end up watching those videos and then just kept watching more because like, oh, that's fascinating. Wait, I need to know more and just kept watching more.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check this out. This sounds like a
Yeah,
great rabbit hole.
I
Um,
got I can't believe that's so weird running into someone that hasn't heard of Forgotten Weapons. That's wild.
I'm outside of the bubble. Yeah, I'm into guns in a theoretical like principle sort of
Yeah,
like I'm pretty like libertarian and all of that.
yeah.
Maybe less so. Well, not really less so. I'm just less like annoying about it now, I think. But
That's totally fair.
yeah, but
I
I'm happy when I hear that somebody is into guns.
yeah. I yeah, I sort of I don't know. I have like mixed feelings about. Well, I mean, I think like if you look at like okay, like no, without wanting to do a deep dive into politics, like I do think that like America's problem with firearms is mostly like an American problem because plenty of European countries have widespread firearms ownership and they don't have nearly the level of gun crime
Yeah.
that the US does. Like the US's issues with guns are like to a large extent like they are issues with crime in the US more than they are issues with guns. So I'm sort of I'm not like super compelled by the idea that like guns are this massive social ill. I'm also not super compelled by the idea like that they're a massive social good. But as a like but also as a as a minority, like as a significant minority, I do like okay, what I'm saying is like if I lived in the US, like I would have a concealed carry license. Yeah.
Based.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
yeah,
Um, I should probably go somewhat soon actually, because like this has
that's
been
fair.
extremely interesting and I keep getting distracted.
Yeah,
But I feel like I should ask a couple more potentially
yeah.
important questions. Like, do you like do you want to have children or like are you down to date somebody who has children?
I am extremely down to date someone who has children. I I definitely think that I would like I think I would like to have children. The only caveat, apart from like the fertility issues because of transness, the only caveat for me is just that I do have I do have I do have borderline personality disorder, which is like this is a thing that anyone who dates me like will want to know. And so I'm sort of like I have like I'm relatively I'm relatively stable. Like, I'm more stable than I was, but
Mm.
I am pretty vulnerable to fairly severe mood swings, and that can and that, that can just be like, that's not always like that's like that's not a great thing to have around, children, children, is like someone who is having these, who is vulnerable to these really severe mood swings. So I want to get especially before having kids myself, I would like to be like a more level person, because I do, like, occasionally I do feel just the only real way to describe, like, I feel like I am sometimes I will just be completely insane, and I don't really want to deal with, like, I don't want to expose kids to, I don't want to, like, because, like, obviously you take responsibility for all your own behavior, but, like, I do have big mood swings
Yeah.
that does influence my behavior, and it influences my behavior in a way that is, like, not, like, that is negative when it comes to, kids. So I would like to be, I'd like to be, like, more chill before, like, seriously considering having kids of my own. But I'm entirely okay with dating people that have kids, and I really and, like, to be frank, like, kids consistently really enjoy my infodumps, and I really enjoy, like, this sort of, okay, like, here's, like, how do I, like, frame this in a way that, like, the kids are going to find, like, really cool. Like, how do I sort of, like, I have this interest, it would be neat, like, this person is, like, this is a curious, excitable person. I want them to share this interest. Like, how do I make it seem cool? How do I make it seem cool to them? And a lot of the time, I find that, like, they're very, like, young kids especially, like, are very receptive audiences to this kind of thing, which is really fun.
Yeah, I feel like people don't take seriously enough how, like, down kids are to be talked to as though
Yeah,
they're thinking beings,
yeah,
with
yeah.
interests.
And it's so, especially when they ask, like, when they ask questions as well, and you can see their thought processes, and you can see them working through ideas and making connections. That's so much fun.
Yeah.
And I really like being around that, and I do sort of, yeah, it would be nice. Like, it really would be nice if I had, like, more kids around me than I do right now, because the amount I do right now is literally zero.
Yeah. College is not great for that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
Are there any deal breakers or anything like this
Mm.
that's, like, really important to you in a relationship?
I Yeah, I mean, well, you posted this on Twitter, um recently, where, like, no, yeah, like, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, is as true for relationships as it is for anything else. I have found that, like, I have not really found, like, any sort of explicit relationship criteria that I've had have ever really had, like, much influence on the people that I end up dating. Um,
Yeah.
so there are certain, like, just generic bounds of human reasonableness that I want people I date to be within. But there's not really anything. Yeah, there's not really anything sort of that comes to mind as, like, being an obvious deal breaker that is not just kind of, like, really kind of fundamentally just, like a really, yeah, just, like, kind of outside of the bounds of what people consider to be reasonable. Like, it's just be interesting, and care about stuff is, like, most of what matters to me. And I'm not super picky about what people care about. I just, like, want people to have something that they really do, like, deeply care about. Um,
That feels like a really common thread in, like, kind of more, I don't know, like, nerdy and curious people that I've talked to. That's, like,
yeah,
surprisingly hard to find outside of our immediate circles.
this is definitely, especially even on, like, university campuses. Like, yeah, the number of people where it feels like, I get this frustration a lot with my degree, where it feels like the people on my course are, like, not that interested in, like, thinking really deeply about what it is, like, what they're actually doing, like,
Yeah.
what biology is, which I just find, like, yeah, I is disheartening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any? Oh, actually, I should ask. Do you have an opinion about, like, drug use or smoking or drinking or anything like this?
Not. I mean, I am. I am. I'm like standard, kind of standard degenerate trans girl. I'm not drug use is not a thing that I like. Drug use is not a thing that I'm fazed by, and I am like, I don't, I don't like use drugs that I don't use drugs that often, but I do like it's. I like experimenting, I like experimenting with pharmaceuticals. Smoking is the only thing that I'm sort of on, just because of the smell. I hate I hate it when people smell of smoke. I hate the smell of cigarette smoke, and also same for weed. I just don't the problem with smoking is that it causes creates a particular sensory experience for people that are interacting with you that I just find unpleasant. I don't mind the fact that you're taking drugs. I mind the fact that the drugs make you smell weird.
I feel like that's a really common problem that people have with, like, I grew
Yeah.
up in an apartment that reeked of smoke.
Oh,
Not where my parents live, but like the
yeah.
complex or whatever, like early 90s, and I find it really nostalgic. But I can imagine it being a problem for people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, one of few really responsible things my dad did was quit smoking cold turkey before I was born.
Oh wow. All right. That's
So
good.
yeah. Um,
Um is there anything that you think we haven't covered that we should?
no, not off the top of my head. I do also have a date me doc that's listed
Oh,
on the directory if people want some more specific, or just a text sort of a text reference for basic information. But yeah, other than there's nothing that really leaps to mind.
awesome. It
All
was
right,
really nice to meet you.
yeah, this was fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. I'm curious. I'll have to follow up, or maybe let me know if you remember how it goes with the the little lab you're building, because it sounds
Yes,
extremely fucking cool.
oh yeah, I absolutely will.
Okay, great.
All right,
We'll see you later.
see you.
Bye.